Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to tell you about an excellent, one of the best interviews I've seen on YouTube in a long time, coming from geopolitical commentator Danny Haiphong, where he interviews Victor Gao. Now he released this 2 days ago on his channel. I will leave a link down below. Highly recommend all of you out there go and watch it, especially if you're an American. So I have a pretty diverse audience, but if you are an American, then I highly recommend that you find an hour and a half. It's a longer interview, but I promise you will not be disappointed. Now, I do got to say up front, okay, that you need to take the blinders off a little bit. You need to open your ears and you need to, have an open mind. I don't say that disrespectfully, but I do know as an American that one of the few things that our media and government, both sides of it, agree upon is the fact that China is the enemy. And that, in my life, I often take a red pill on stuff and I asked, why? Why are these guys always portrayed as our enemy? What is the thinking behind that? And if you start to just ask, why would the government be pushing this propaganda to us? And you watch this interview, then just go out and do some simple research yourself. I guarantee your mind will be blown, okay? Victor Gao is a Chinese lawyer. He is also a businessman, and he's an educator now. I believe he works at university. Speaks extremely well. He speaks extremely, how do I want to say it? Digestible. What he says is very easy to understand. Some people, when they're experts, I do feel that, like for a guy like me, there's just like they're talking above my head. They're using a lot of words and terms that maybe even I don't know. And I feel like when Victor comes on, he says things that are just very easy and simple to understand, just using basic logic and reason. You don't have to worry about him trying to come on there and using all these crazy terms, which you have no idea about. So again, highly recommend going to watch that. We'll leave a link to that. Now, in today's episode of Ruben Tech, welcome, where we talk about the intersection of tech, politics, and finance, we are going to look at a few of the items that Victor talked about. Now, I thought about bringing it up on the screen, try to contact Danny about that. I couldn't get a hold of him, so that's fine. Again, I'll just leave the link down below. But mainly the things that Victor talked about that concern me have to do with the U.S. sanctioning of Huawei. He spoke at length about this. He also spoke about how the U.S. is trying to keep China down, i.e., keep down the AI and tech hardware industry. And as you know, on my channel, I have talked about that many times. And Victor did a really good, really eloquent job explaining this and why it isn't beneficial to Americans in a simple sense. Okay. And one of these things he talked about that I want to hit on here real quick is the issue with overreach. Okay. And so I want to talk about this real quick. When Huawei, in 2017, they had their CFO, Meng, she was arrested by Canadian authorities. Okay. This was a perfect example of what I would call extreme overreach. Let's just talk about this real quick. When she was arrested, and I went through this entire case before, I'm not going to talk about before. Mind you, she's the daughter of Huawei CEO Ring Zhenfei. Okay. She is a successful businesswoman herself. Okay. And she was arrested because the United States, one, it committed an overreach where it laid sanctions upon Iran, stating that no one could go through and make any kind of transaction with Iran. Okay, so think about that first. Now, it's not as simple as that. It's a little bit more complicated than what I just said there. But they essentially prevented certain types of transactions from happening with Iran. So I want you to think about that. Okay, think about the fact that a nation is telling the rest of the world that if you interact with another nation that has nothing to do with nation A, is telling you if you interact with nation B, okay, which is a separate nation, a separate sovereign nation, and you're a sovereign nation, that nation A can arrest your citizens, your private citizens, at will and threaten them with criminal penalties, including imprisonment. Think about that. That is a prime example of overreach, right? And so that's what happened in the case of Meng. Now, Huawei had been under the government spotlight in the US since like 2012 for quite a while. But they came up with this charge in 2017. Okay, they said that basically Huawei had done some transactions, some prohibited transactions with Iran. And when they did this, these were discovered, and that Meng, being the CFO, was the one that was on the hook for these. And so a New York-based judge went ahead and he issued an arrest warrant. And now here's a second example of overreach. They had her arrested in Canada, which I do believe she had a dual citizenship with. Okay, so now Canada is acting as a vassal state, arresting a Canadian citizen. I believe she did have dual citizenship for the United States. But Canada had a problem because under their rule of law, it stated that you cannot arrest and extradite somebody unless you have a similar law on the books. And Canada had no sanctions against Iran. These were purely a law created by America. It's not like murder, which is a universal law that every country in the world and mankind agrees is wrong. It's not like stealing, okay? This was literally a made-up U.S. law of thou shalt not transact with Iran. And Canada didn't have such a law. And Meng's lawyers pointed that out. And in their overreach, in the U.S. overreach, what did they do? They told Canada, you're not letting her go. And Canada said, okay. And so they found a charge that they could bring her up on to extradite her. They just looked for everything they had. And mind you, I want to tell you, and not that this was important because I don't think this was the point of any of this, but mind you, the initial charge against her for sanctions, not against her technically, but against Huawei of violating Iranian sanctions imposed by the U.S., that was never proven. There was no proof for any of that. But mind you, now Canada said, okay, we have to obey. Here's the overreach. What are we going to do? We have a private citizen here that we've arrested that we shouldn't. We have to justify it. Oh, she defrauded our banks. And Meng's lawyer said, what? By Canadian law, by your law, said to the court, by your law, court, fraud can only happen if there's harm, and harm is defined by these matters: financial loss, et cetera, et cetera. So by your very definition, there is no harm if these transactions occurred, which again, they were never proven. But even if these alleged transactions occurred, there was no harm as shown by you to any of these banks, thus there's no fraud. And what did Canada do? It said there was a harm to the bank's reputations, and this would cause them to be valued less. Oh my God. And so you can't make this stuff up. This is an example of overreach, okay? And this shows you where, I'm sorry, I'm laughing at that. I started crying because it's just, every time I talk about this, it's just so absurd. And so what happens when you have overreach is people start to lose faith in you. And that's what Victor talks about. He says you have to be, when you have overreach, you have to spend so much time on your overreach that one, you're going to generate people against you, enemies, and two, you can't focus back home. And we see that in America. We're so concerned with sanctioning Iran, sanctioning Russia, yet our middle class knows that our children aren't going to live as good as we had it. And we're not living as good as the prior generation. And our infrastructure is getting worse over here. And I can tell you that for a fact. My sister works at the We Energy power plant in Milwaukee. And they're basically on duct tape over there. They're running on duct tape. Okay, they're bare bones. They were supposed to take this plant down. It's super old. Everything's breaking down. But they can't because they can't meet the energy needs because the United States doesn't invest in itself. Instead, it takes all its dollars to overreach into other people's business and try to dominate people and create an empire, but all empires fail. And this is why they fail, is because of overreach. And Victor points that out. He says, China has been the world's longest continuous civilization, not by shutting out the rest of the world, but by focusing within. It's not that you shut out the rest of the world. You don't have to be ultra-nationalistic. But you take care of your business at home, and then when you look at the rest of the world, you treat them fairly. You have win-win negotiations. You respect their sovereignty. Okay? And so here we had another case, right? So we have men getting arrested in 2017. Then we have in 2019, Donald Trump. Oh, and she was released. She was released for 2 actual spies, one of which said he was a proxy. I actually believe him. But China did a prisoner swap. So here you have somebody who was an innocent person released in a prisoner swap for 2 people who were actually criminals. Okay. And so in this overreach, think of how many Canadians out there saw the action of the government, and they're not stupid, and they were like, wait, this is BS. Our government is acting as a vassal state for the United States on pure BS. You think they didn't recognize that? Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of Canadians out there who didn't, but I'm sure there's a lot of Canadians who did. And what do? They lose faith in their government. They lose faith in the U.S. This is the harm that I tell you happens when you have overreach. Then in 2019, Donald Trump comes along and he sanctions Huawei, right? Puts them in the blacklist, essentially. And he sanctions China's chip industry, essentially. So now ASML is unable to service any of the advanced lithography machines they have in China, right? And they had sold billions of dollars worth of equipment to China. And now they can't sell any more of their best equipment. And who does that hurt? It hurts ASML. It hurts the Dutch economy, okay? And why are they doing it? They're doing it for an imaginary, God-like law that the United States has given. And we're not God, okay? This is what Victor talks about this. He's like, are you God to go out and make these decrees? Like, that's what it is when you're interfering in other people's. We're America, and we're telling a Dutch country that they can't service a contract that they made with their Chinese customer. Think about that. We're telling ARM that you can't sell your V9 instruction set architecture to China, thus causing ARM billions of dollars of lost revenue. Can't sell your latest chipset design to China. Okay, we're telling Qualcomm you can't sell your stuff to China. 2019, that happens, right? Huawei gets put on the blacklist. Now Google can't use, their Android can't be used by China. They have to shut down services, right? And America's like, this is how we will limit them. This is how we will limit their growth. And why would you want to limit someone's growth? What kind of overreach is that? Imagine you out there, you right now. I'm looking at you. See my eyes? I'm looking at you. Imagine that my goal in life was to limit your personal development, right? That right now, my only goal is to limit you. I don't want you to develop. What kind of person would I be to have that mindset? What kind of insecure piece of beep, I still don't know if I could swear on YouTube, would I be to have that type of mindset where I honestly don't want you to succeed, where I don't want you to develop personally? That's insanity, right? But yet that's what the U.S. stated goal was with China. Now, of course, it didn't say that out loud. Out loud, it said, oh, espionage, which they had, mind you, they had no proof of, right? But internally, and even in some of the politics and articles, it came to a point where politicians said, yeah, we want to do this. We want to limit them, right? Think of what kind of mindset it is to try to limit the growth of a people or of a person. That in itself is a limited mindset, limited growth. We should be helping each other each and every single one of us to be the best possible individuals we can be. And Victor Gao speaks of that. He says, he pointed out that President Xi said, the Pacific is big enough for us to grow in our own different ways into the two best possible countries we can be, the best versions of ourselves. And that's when I look at you out there. I want you to grow. I'm hoping that you want me to grow so that we can be the best possible versions of ourselves. And by doing that, if we are truly the best possible versions of ourselves, we're going to make this entire world. We're going to make all of this a better place. Okay? For both of us and for our children and for our grandchildren. But if I come out and I say, I want to limit you, and I don't want you to be successful, that's not going to make this a better place. That's going to make this a worse place. Right? It's not the type of mindset you want to have. But yet, that's what we did. And then what happened? Well, it wasn't working. It wasn't working. Huawei, China said, okay, you don't want to work with us? We were working with you. Your companies were benefiting. We were benefiting. We were all benefiting together. But if you don't want to do that, we're going to double down and focus even more. And think of it, it's kind of like a classic American story where you have the bully trying to hold somebody down and the person breaks free of the chains, breaks free, the slave breaks free of their chains, as American slave masters trying to keep them down, the slave breaks free of their chain. That's what happened with Huawei. It wasn't easy, but they went ahead and they developed Harmony OS. They're developing their own chip supply chains from the ground up, literally everything, instruction set, their own fabs, their own EUV lithography machines, everything, like literally everything they're developing. They've turned internally. And then the Biden administration was going to double down. And was going to use this failed policy in the rest of the freaking world and divvy up the world into sections where we're like, hey, you can have our chips, you can't. And Jensen Huang was like, this is madness. This isn't working. Are you looking at Huawei? You see what they've done? And now we're going to do this failed policy with other people? It's not going to work. And think about that overreach. And it finally, Trump came out, banned the H200s. Okay? And then Jensen spoke out more, and you hear me speaking out. And then they come out and they release export controls where they tell the world that you cannot, they tell Huawei they can't use their 910 accelerators, A, B, or C. And if they do, we will arrest you. We will give you criminal penalty. We will give you fines. I'm not kidding. You might say they can't do that to Huawei. Yes, they can. I just gave you the example with Ming. There would be nothing under that sanction, under that decree, that stops them from arresting someone from Huawei itself, someone from a Chinese company. Okay? It's not just to the rest of the world. It was to China itself. It said anywhere. Nobody can use this. And what gives them the right to say that? To tell other people what they can and can't purchase, who they can and can't transact with. What gives them the right? What? You tell me what power, what authority. And people see this overreach. And then David Sachs, the Trump AI czar, he points out, hey, this isn't going to work. Which I said, which Jensen said. And even I said, you know what? And when I say this, understand that I don't want the U.S. to even do this, but it's like if you truly want to keep China down, you would sell these chipsets into there because the most important thing is the software. And who controls the software controls everything, okay? It's not that NVIDIA has the best chips, they do, but it's that they have CUDA. And so if we were to sell into that system and get people on CUDA, that would limit the growth of Huawei more than anything. It really would. And then David Sachs came out and said that. Because look at Tensor. Google actually has the best GPUs, or sorry, not GPUs, they're TPUs, and they're better than the GPUs from NVIDIA because they're TPUs. But Google doesn't have CUDA, okay? Huawei has a CM384, which is just as good as the NVL 200s, but they don't have CUDA. They don't have that level of a software stack yet. So David Sachs did this, and so then they said, okay, you know what, NVIDIA, you can sell these chips back into the market, but you got to put a back door into it. And of course, the Chinese government found the back door. It's just like, oh my gosh. How dumb are you people? And now we may have lost that market forever. And again, when I look at it, I don't think we should be doing this to limit them. I think we should be doing it out of fair competition, because even like Ren Zhengfei said, and Jensen Huang has said, when you have competition at the highest level, it drives each side to be the best version of themselves. Fair competition. Not unfair, fair competition. But now, think of what you did with this. Now the entire Chinese market, which could be as much as hundreds of billions of dollars over the next 5 years, it might be lost to the US, because now if you're in China, you have to say, one, is there a back door in my NVIDIA chip I'm going to buy? Two, will NVIDIA be able to support their software stack, or will the American government turn it off at a whim? Right? They've done it before. They did it with ASML. They did it with ARM. Right? You have to ask those serious questions. And then three, maybe you just have Chinese pride, national pride, and you're like, hey, I'm not using this because these people, they're stating out loud, they want to destroy us for some reason. Why am I going to send my dollars over there? See how it ruins everything? This type of mindset, this type of overreach, it doesn't improve anything for anyone. But fundamentally, what bothers me the most, and I keep getting back to this, and I can't harp on this enough, but is what gives them the right. Whenever man tries to act like God in that sense, it doesn't work. Nothing gives them the right. Nothing gives someone the right to tell someone else what they can and can't buy on something like that, who they can and can't transact with. You know? And unfortunately, it bugs me a lot because, like, for me personally, it works because I'm a little guy. What can I say? You know, I don't mean to say it like in that manner, like demean myself, but it's true. Like, I would like to buy a Huawei Mate, one of the newer phones on the current chips. But every time I think about it, like important one, I get worried. Okay, because it's like, okay, what would be the benefit? Well, it'd be fun to play around with. It'd be nice to see this technology. I could make a video about it. But what are my risks? Right now these chips aren't sanctioned, but that list says that technically they can add anything to it at any time. So do I want to risk being arrested by my government for buying a phone? No. And I hate the fact that they have me thinking that. Right? Because this isn't a universal truth. It isn't like, Ruben, don't drink and drive. Which is obvious because I can hurt other people. Okay? So you tell me don't drink and drive, my brain doesn't go, oh, it's like, okay, yeah, I can hurt other people. Hurting people is bad. Everybody knows that. That's just a universal thing. Right? Yeah, don't steal from other people. Yeah, that's universal. Okay, even though my government did it to Russia, they went and stole $300 billion from the SWIFT system. Hey, everybody use SWIFT. Oh, we're going to take your money. So yeah, that bugs me. It bugs me that that's in my head. It really is. I'd like to buy that new MateBook Fold computer. It's just absolutely incredible. It's a hinge. It's like the Samsung Galaxy Fold, right? It's not like these other computers where they have not a hinge. They have a hinge, sorry, but they don't have the screen through the hinge. It's not one piece. It's two screens. This is one piece. I'd love to buy something like that. I'm not risking it. I mean, other people do. They don't care. But for me, I'm always up like that. I have this mindset in my life where like I'll be the one they come after. I'll be the one. I'll be like the, you know, me and 1,000 other people will buy it, but I'll be the one they'll be like, hey, we're gonna make an example. Okay, we're gonna pick someone random. We'll pick that guy. And it's like, what? Then I'll end up in Alcatraz or something like that. But let me tell you something. If you're an American, you're watching this. Everything I'm saying will make America great again. MAGA, make us great again. Make the United States great again. Okay? Stop worrying about the sovereignty of other nations. Stop trying to limit other nations. And let's build America back again. Okay? Let's look at this wonderful country of ours and let's invest in schools and road and energy, right? And healthcare. Let's look to China and say, how can we be partners on win-win situations? Because they're not out to destroy us. If they were in 2008, they wouldn't have bailed us out when the financial system collapsed. And China bought hundreds of billions of dollars of bonds. They wouldn't have bought those if they were trying to destroy us. And they're not trying to destroy us because they know that wouldn't be beneficial for them. That's not their philosophy. Their philosophy is to look at nations around the world and build meaningful relationships that benefit both sides. That's why they're the leading trade partner. Like Victor said, they're the leading trade partner of 184 countries. You think that they put a gun to those countries' heads like we are with the G7 and said, sign this deal or else? No. They did that because it's to the benefit of both sides. Well, let's do that. America could do that. I guarantee it would help us. It would make us great again. That would truly make us great again. That's what I got for you guys today. Have a great weekend, all of you, no matter where you are. Take care. I hope be the best version of yourself, okay? Take care.